What up? Welcome back. Coming back to a league update. I apologize for the delay in getting some content out. We had some water damage here in the apartment, real world stuff. So the two bedroom has been turned into a one. Has not been the easiest of experiences over the last week and change. So been challenging to get content together, but we're back with some new content coming at you right now. We're pushed back our league update just a couple of days. We are right before the NBA All-Star break. It's February 15th, and the trade deadline has just come and gone, and that's where we are going to start with our league update. Not a big trade deadline. A lot of the moves were kind of done in the months and the weeks leading up, of course, last summer. A ton of moves in the NBA, and then in the last couple weeks and the last couple months, you have the Desmond Cooper trade to Miami and the Trae Young deal to Houston. All of that sapped the trade deadline of its normal juice. But that doesn't mean there wasn't some notable deals to be looked at. Let's start with the Los Angeles Lakers. They go out, they make a deal to get Ian Bledsoe from the Denver Nuggets. Bledsoe is a very talented 3-and-D guy. He's on a pretty favorable deal right now. He's owed $19 million over this year and next. He's a 45% three-point shooter. So the Lakers are giving up their 2037 unprotected first, plus Garrett Zipser and Nikita Ostrovsky. Those guys are valuable bench players, but they're not guys that are going to swing a series. Ian Bledsoe can step in. The Lakers desperately needed three-point shooting. Bledsoe will provide that. Meanwhile, the Los Angeles Clippers, they move on from Franklin Knox, their first and only trade of this trade deadline. They send him to the Washington Wizards for Tanner Keefe. Keefe, not really a great basketball player, buried in this rotation for the Wizards, but his $12 million contract helps make that happen, plus a 2035 first-round pick from Washington that's top 18 protected. It turns into a second-round pick if it does not convey, so a very low-risk buy here. Next, a big move. Toronto acquires Zeke Naji from the Denver Nuggets for Keldon Johnson and the Memphis Grizzlies 2034 second-round pick. That's basically a first-round pick, sitting about 34, 35, depending on where they end up, maybe 33. Again, we got 32 teams in the league, so just on the outside of that first round, but the Raptors desperately needed a big man that's actually got size. Zeke Naji has been flirting in the top 5 for rebounding all season long. They needed that. Keon Wallace is their starting big man. He's 6'9". He's good, but if you've got to go through Xavier Carter, you've got to go through Robert Mack, Devin Anderson potentially in the Western Conference, Rashawn Matthews, in the Eastern Conference, you need Zeke Naji. That's what the Raptors get. Two other smaller deals that go through. Parker Ellis, he's traded to the Sacramento Kings from Memphis. Parker Ellis is a good 29-year-old backup point guard. That's for Tremont Waters, who had that huge game filling in on broadcasted national TV for the injured at the time Tyrese Alston, plus Fernando Cruz. The Clippers 2037 second, and then the Kings 2034 second. And then the last one, Alfonso Harrell is moved from the New Orleans Pelicans to the Charlotte Hornets. Again, he was on the Warriors the last 2 seasons, championship winning and starting big man. Pelicans have been struggling, so they've now moved on of the 2 big offseason acquisitions they had, which was Shane Ruffin and Harrell. That is a move for Kyra Lewis because of his sizable-ish contract. Elvin Formenti, Paulus Jasikevich. That's butchered. That is butchered up last name, but that's the move. Not a lot of pieces. This is just a move for New Orleans to get a guy that really wasn't going to be contending for them this season. He's on a decent 2-year deal. Gets him to a team that is contending. Then, a couple of buyouts. More than a couple. Brandon Ingram gets bought out for the Los Angeles Clippers. He is going to sign with the Boston Celtics. He had a $52 million deal. Made it next to impossible for him to make his way anywhere. Sasha Kasparov is also bought out for the Memphis Grizzlies. He had a $42 million deal. Again, couldn't find anywhere. He lands with the Brooklyn Nets. So that's going to be a really formidable front court. Rashawn Matthews and Sasha Kasparov. Brandon Boston Jr. is bought out, but he, with dealing with a broken leg, his landing spot not quite confirmed at this point. And then DJ Stewart bought out by the Las Vegas Lights. Stewart, $14 million deal, but the problem right now in the NBA is there's a ton of big contracts and not a lot of middle-of-the-road $12 to $20 million contracts on the books because a lot of teams were sitting in the luxury tax over the past couple seasons. The salary cap is starting to rise. Teams are getting out of the luxury tax. We had at one point, I think, 20 teams in the NBA were in the luxury tax, which completely debilitated the availability on that middle market. That may be ending soon, but that's why a guy like DJ Stewart moves on. It's why Franklin Knox, $9 million deal, doesn't have a ton of suitors out there. The Clippers end up having to take it for what probably is going to end up as a second-round pick or a very late first-round pick. Last piece, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He signs with the Oklahoma City Thunder. He will be their backup point guard. He'd been sitting on the sidelines for much of this offseason. Obviously, he won his championship last year with the Golden State Warriors as a backup point guard. Now he's headed out to back up Tobias Bell. That's our trade deadline. Moving along, and we're going to try to do these a little bit quicker, as I say, as this pod goes a little bit longer. But we're going to try to move these kind of quick, hit the high levels so we can dive into podcasts a little bit more in depth. So, Western Conference standings, Golden State still sitting on top. The Jazz are rising up, that one sitting at number 2. Meanwhile, the Eastern Conference, Boston Celtics and the Brooklyn Nets, without their top 2 players, Brighton Reed out, Xavier Carter out, they still have been rolling. We're diving into that on the TGE podcast coming up next. But they are 1 and 2. The Bucks sitting at 3. The Pacers storming down to 4. All right, our league leaders, Tyrese Alston still sits atop the league lead for scoring, 35.3. He's surpassed Jalen Justice here in the last couple weeks. He's been phenomenal. Rebounding, no surprise, it's still Rashawn Matthews. Assists and steals now. Assists are still Japhon Stokes. He's 10 per game. He finally gets over that double digits. And Savion White remains on top. However, Savion White, which we'll get to in a second, broken leg out 6 to 8 weeks. Blocks per game coming down a little bit, but Cameron Sullivan still sits atop the league lead with 2.9 blocks per game. All right, we mentioned some big injuries that have come through and impacted the NBA. We're going to start with that. The big ones, you look around, it's a broken leg for Savion White. He's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks with that one. Ja Morant still out with a shoulder injury. Robert Mack, a torn calf. That's 4 to 6 weeks. Swift and Reed both out for at least another couple weeks with their broken ankle and knee tendonitis. CJ McCoy, we saw that one live in the matchup with Oklahoma City. 8 to 10 weeks still with a fractured humerus. And then Ibrahim Mobley, we talked about that when the Pacers played in that one. He's also out 4 to 6 weeks with a broken thigh. All right, that's our league update, trade deadline, standings, league leaders. We're diving into some of the stories coming up next on the TGE pod. Thank you for staying with us again. Apologies for the delay. We're coming up next with a little deep dive right here in the Golden Era.